Welcome in again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the R&D Sports Report. My name is Dishmond, and I am joined, as always, fresh off vacation by Rylee. Rylee, how you doing?
I'm doing great, bro.
You should be coming straight off of vacation.
Oh,
I should think you're feeling pretty good.
I'm feeling spunky, my dude.
Right off the bat, we do want to apologize. We've been a little slacking recently, but we do have good excuses. Mm-hmm. I myself was able to bring my son, my first child, home from the NICU, so that transition...
Congratulations.
Thank you. That transition, was a little bit difficult, which is part of the reason why we've been kind of delayed and not really haven't been able to sit down and do this for, what, a week?
Week and a half?
No, 2 weeks. Almost 2 weeks, I think. Huh. But as soon as, he came home, you went on vacation. I was going to do a podcast, an episode by myself. It just didn't quite work out, having the new baby around again at home instead of being at the hospital. It just didn't quite work out where I would be able to do it. But no worries, we are back. And
guess who's back?
We've got some exciting stuff going on this episode. We actually have our first interview coming up in the second half of this podcast. So we will be joined by Kent Sterling. He is a radio host in Indianapolis, and we will get into that a little bit more as I do the interview with him. But gonna be able to talk with him the NFL draft, a little bit of NBA playoffs, and specifically from that Indy sector, from the Indianapolis sector, how the Colts did and how it's viewed there. And we're also going to get into a big recruiting story that happened recently on Monday with him in regards to Romeo Langford going to IU, going to Indiana University. Be able to get his thoughts on it because Kent was actually there and was able to be there at the ceremony. So make sure you tune in to the second half of this, and we ourselves are going to go ahead and get started here. Rylee, first off, once again, welcome back from vacation.
I'm glad
you
to
look
be
nice
back, bro.
Nice and refreshed.
Thank you.
All I can say is lucky.
I had a great time. I'm glad to be back and giving y'all entertainment again, though.
The thing, when we, took those 2 weeks, I kept going, I need to sit down and record. And it just never worked out.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it was just like getting back in this groove, us sitting down again, it's like you feel home again, right?
Right.
Like not only literally for you since you just came back from vacation.
Yeah.
But, more like it just, you hit that comfort zone with doing this.
Feel like you're in the norm again.
We're what, like 22 episodes in now or something like that. We really started to find our groove, and then it was like everything just kind of hit at once. And our schedule should even out now, so hopefully we'll be able to get back to that twice a week format for you all. That's our goal here, obviously. We just had some issues, obviously, with me going back and forth to the hospital.
Timing,
but
it
was all a whack. But now we are back, and boy, is there a lot to talk about.
Oh my gosh! Give me the breath and the oxygen. I'm gonna need all of them.
I had been biting at the bit to be able to sit down and talk these stories with you, and we're gonna hit the NFL draft that occurred last week.
Yep.
We're going to hit the NBA playoffs, including going back into the first round, Game 7, Pacers, Cavs, and into now the second round. The stuff that we hadn't really been able to talk about simply because we hadn't been able to sit down together. And so there's a lot going on.
No kidding. Freaking out, man.
But, let's start with, I guess, what could be considered the oldest news, but it's also the newest news because it's the NBA playoffs.
True.
Right? So in the couple weeks since we've sat down and been able to record here within the NBA playoffs, right, to most notably, I guess, to where to start is the Pelicans 3-6 matchup, right? That's kind of the biggest upset overall. Matter of fact, it's right the biggest difference in seeding, and I wasn't completely surprised by this sweep though.
No, not really.
But I also will say I'm happy it happened because the Pelicans PR on point.
Yeah.
Having whoever's doing that, they need a raise. Because when they sweep them, they go on and they start talking trash to everybody at ESPN who picked them to lose. And the Warriors have to go to Game 5, and they're like, oh, so Game 5, we'll be here waiting, which is just great, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which speaking of the Warriors Game 5, right? Were you surprised real quick that the Spurs were able to force Game 5?
No, I feel like Ginobili and Tony Parker just had just a tad bit energy left in them, and I feel like they used it for that big W. That's the thing for me. I wasn't completely surprised because I thought they would win one. Yeah.
At the same time, I could have seen it going to sweep, which I know just kind of sounds dumb. I wasn't surprised, but I could have seen it. But had we actually gone back and listened, or I wrote it down at the time, our picks would have made sense. But since it didn't do that, we'll just go off our noodles here.
Yeah.
I believe both of us might have picked 5 games.
5 or 6.
Well, I think it was 5 games at most for the Spurs and the Warriors.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things when the Warriors win, you're of course they won. But at the same time, they did it without Steph in there.
Right.
So they just got Steph back, which, how about that kind of congratulation present for the Pelicans and their A-plus social media game? You draw the Warriors. So Congratulations for all your success on the court. Here's the Warriors. But it's kind of what you get sometimes, so.
Yeah. Yeah, how are you getting knocked down?
But with the Pelicans, I do want to kind of get into this because they've hit this groove, right, over these last few games. Their pace of play is so fast. Overall, season-wise, they were 4th in the league in their pace of play. And for the Warriors, they're number 5. So, actually, the Pelicans play at a faster pace, and that's what they wanted to do. Do you think that, first makes sense to play at a fast pace, if I can talk, with the Warriors? Even though you want to play at a fast pace, do you think it's smart for the Pelicans to still try and do that?
Yes, I do, because that wears the Warriors down. I know that they got KD, and, I'm not going to go over the whole lineup, but I know that those guys aren't, that young, so I know that they can get tired very quickly. So I think if they keep up the pressure and keep up the, the shots and keep driving the lane, getting in the paint, passing, I think that they might have a chance of scoring and even getting the W.
I agree. At one point you go, well, why would you want to play fast with the Warriors? The same reason you want to sometimes press a pressing team.
Right.
They're used to doing it to you, but they may not be used to having that same treatment back. And if you look statistically over the season, the Pelicans play faster than the Warriors do. So that may speed them up more than they want to be. And I think it might have been Draymond that said something. It could have also been KD, but It's been a little bit after that game one. They were talking about the pace of play at which the Pelicans were pushing it, and they were like, man, that, basically, like, that's a ridiculous pace at what they're doing.
Well, and, the Warriors is a team that can, if you give them enough time, they're going to get set up on defense and going to destroy you. Destroy you, bro. You're not going to get a shot in the paint, nor, on the, oh my gosh, I just lost the word, perimeter. You're just not going to get a shot off. You're always going to have pressure defense on you. So I think if they keep up the fast pace and keep going, they're going to, one, wear them out, and two, gives the Pelicans a chance to score and, maybe even create a quick play.
Well, and I think also, to your point, right, the Warriors, right, that's what they do to teams. They play fast, faster than your defense can get set up and ready to go, and that's what they do. They drive the lane and kick it out because your defense can't have a chance to set up. And so, if the Pelicans are doing that, you can score on the Warriors. The problem is if you allow the Warriors to get in that half-court defense with a guy like KD who's, really long and mobile, a guy like Draymond, who's athletic. Steph may not be the best, defensive guy, and even Klay, but, like, you see the moments in, like, Klay Thompson, like, he's more athletic than you think he is sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I love Klay.
Just because a lot of times, he stands out there and shoots threes. But, it's one of those things, like, can the Pelicans, now that it's going back to New Orleans, be able to get a win in New Orleans against the Warriors, or is this, like, going to be a sweep? You and I, like, I think at most this goes 6 games.
I'm going to go big, and I'm going to go 7.
So you have the Pelicans pretty much bouncing back at home these next 2 games.
Yep.
Tying up the series, and then we just trade it off.
Yeah.
So then who wins Game 7? In your scenario?
I really don't want to pick them, but I'm going to say Warriors.
Wait,
depending on who has home, it really depends on that.
Well, it would be the Warriors or the higher
right.
seed.
So
they would be home in Game 7.
So I would say the Warriors. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree. I could see it going 7. I think 6 is the max, and I think 5 might honestly be more likely. I think the Pelicans come back Game 3 and win in New Orleans, but at the same, then like they lose Game 4 and 5 to the Warriors. But while we're here on the Pelicans, there's been some discussion here with Mirotić that maybe he is, while not a better player overall, maybe he's just a better fit for the Pelicans, better than Boogie. Victor Oladipo up at Indiana, and we'll get to the Pacers-Cavs series, but Victor Oladipo is like a different player now that he's not playing alongside of Russ. Sometimes it's just the system and the other players around you that affects you. You put LeBron in just about any team, and it's not really going to matter. You can say the same thing for like a guy like Kevin Durant. But at the same time, would Steph be as good as Steph is if he wasn't in that Warriors offense? But that's not really what I want to get at here. It's with this success that they've had in the playoffs with Mirotić, after trading for him after Boogie goes down, do you think that makes it more likely that not only Boogie doesn't sign, but maybe the Pelicans aren't as sold to be able to get him back on the team?
I actually do. Boogie coming off this injury, gives him that image of, he's weak, he's still healing, he's not really 100% anymore. And I think that, with Mirotić getting the, the upper hand and getting the time to get on the floor. I just think Mirotic might have won this war.
Well, I think overall he might fit better, like puzzle piece wise, just because he's more of a shooting threat than DeMarcus is, so it kind of opens the floor more. Yes, Boogie can shoot the three, but it's not like you want him to just go stand out there and shoot threes. You want his back to the basket a lot of times.
Well, I think Mirotic is a little bit more fluent on offense than Boogie is, and I think Boogie's a lot more fluent on defense than Mirotic is.
There's no doubt about the defense thing. Boogie can move better laterally than Mirotic can.
Well, he's also more aggressive as well.
Well, and more athletic, more aggressive, moves laterally better, but at the same time, it's one of those things because you hear these different places that Boogie can be going. And I tell you, one that I think, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much because I think we'll get here after the season ends, but Washington being as a destination for him, right? Team up with John Wall and Bradley Beal in Washington, first off, do you think that's a real possibility? Second off, do you think he goes somewhere else other than the Pelicans?
Again, coming off this injury, I think they're going to downgrade him. So it is a huge possibility that he could go anywhere besides the Pelicans. The Wizards being a huge
I honestly, I haven't even looked at cap numbers.
Right.
But, I don't even know if the Wizards can, One team I think that could swing the deal is, the Pacers and put him with Oladipo. But, if we're just not talking money-wise, does he fit there?
He does. I feel like the Wizards do need a bigger and taller guy.
Or, Gortat's good.
Yeah.
But as long as he's been in the league, he's good. But Boogie's so much better.
Yeah.
Offensively, he's more dangerous offensively, especially for the Wizards. That would help maybe their offense better.
How do you say his name? Gortat?
Gortat?
Like tater tot?
Marcin Gortat? Yeah, I think. I don't know.
Anyways, Gortat hasn't been the main star before,
Well, he was never really the main star anywhere he went.
He's known, but he's not John Wall.
He's one of those guys who's been in the league, and you're like, dude, how long have you been in the league? You've been in for 20 years, 20 years, really? How'd you make a living for? But he does the little things, He just gets in there and gets dirty, gets the rebounds and this and that.
Yeah, but you just need more. I feel of a star in there. I feel like since Boogie has been. I don't think he's been in the league as much as Gortat has been, or Gortat, either one. If I butcher his name, I'm sorry, fellas. But, I just think that Boogie has been the main star before, and I think he could still be the main star down in the Wizards. Up in the Wizards, either one. But still, I think with John Wall, Bradley Beal, I just think it'd be good for him. I think he'd have the assets.
I think it would work well for him because you'd have a really good point guard in John Wall. You have the shooter in Bradley Beal. If you're able to keep an Otto Porter or something where you can have another shooter, it frees things up for Boogie to be able to move maybe a little bit more inside, kind of spreads the floor out more. At the same time, I can see him staying in New Orleans because he and AD have been able to become good friends. You ask, maybe even at the end of last year, if he stays or he goes, I would think you probably would have went after being traded from the Kings. He didn't want to leave Sacramento. He loved Sacramento. He loved the community there. He still does, work there in the community. But to not go down this rabbit hole too much, but I think the play of Mirotic has made it maybe even a bigger debate than we might think of. Do you keep him because he's a better fit, a puzzle piece wise? He just fits better there. Maybe because it almost seems like sometimes with DeMarcus and Anthony Davis, like they work well, but it's like the only way I can think of it is it's like a gear that works most of the time, but every now and then gets hung up, and then you kind of set it free and the gear works for a while, and then it kind of gets hung. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I understand.
It's two gears that go together, and every now and then seize it and then go. It's like it's just not a completely fluid.
Well, I think with Mirotić having so much time on the floor, I think people are going to get used to him, and I think if Boogie does come back, people are going to be like, dude, where's Mirotić at?
Well, and even Mirotić, but like Mirotić, he may not want to come off the bench.
True.
Some dudes don't want to come off the bench. Like a guy like Carmelo Anthony, he doesn't. Even though he's in the extreme back end of his career, right? He still thinks he's a primetime player.
Yeah.
And like if we go to this Jazz OKC, like,
by the way, one heck of a series. I'm just throwing
for the Jazz, yes.
Yes. Well,
I know, the games were good, but
also being a Jazz fan and an OKC fan, I thought it was a great series. But I think the best series would have to be the Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks, dude.
Do you say that's the best series, or do you go Cavs Pacers? Because for me, I
felt like I was
I almost agree with you in the Celtics Bucks, just because you kind of could see where it would, but you didn't think Milwaukee had enough firepower. I think the series between the Celtics and the Bucks is so interesting because you had the beef with Eric Bledsoe and Terry Rose. I tried.
I'm sorry, folks.
Quit playing with your chair over there.
I was sitting in my chair, fellas, and I went to pull on this thing that pops the chair up and down.
You just went down. That's all I saw. Oh, jeez.
I plopped down. That was hilarious.
All right. So let's try to get this train back on the tracks. Yes.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh, dude.
Oh, this episode is quickly going off the rails.
No kidding.
But, you have the Celtics and the Bucks, and, you could see where it could go. 7 games, but especially the way the Celtics started out the series, you were just like, this might be a sweep.
Did it go to 5 or 6?
It went to 7 games.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh. Either way, I thought.
Look, you've been vacationing too hard. It went to 7 games.
No kidding. Okay. Look, I don't know why. I really don't. But I felt like I was in 1990 watching the Pacers and the Cavs. I was old school. I guess because Pacers are just.
Because let's be honest. The Pacers haven't really been relevant since Reggie Miller's been there.
True.
And how long's that been? What, 10, 15 years now or something? I don't know.
Even if that, Roy Hibbert,
they tried the thing with Roy Hibbert. Well, and you say relevant, and yeah, PG-13 was there.
Yeah.
But it was just him, and I know what you're saying, because it was Pacers, Pistons or whatever, Eastern Conference Finals a lot. And, sorry, Siri's making an appearance here. I don't know why.
Siri, shut.
Oh, hush. No,
Siri, shut up.
Quit it. There we go.
Siri.
All right, so, I agree with you. It did have, that older, you know what it honestly had? It kind of had, that early 90s Pistons, Bulls kind of feel to it, because it was just a battle almost back in, because the Cavs would be way up, and then the Pacers storm back, and vice versa, and it just, I thought the Cavs would win all along. I honestly did.
Yeah,
but as these games kept going, it was Game 7 is I don't know, Pacers may be able to do this, and Victor Oladipo, you didn't see this when he was with the Thunder.
No. No. Well,
and as I know, you being a Thunder fan yourself, it's where was this when you were with us?
Exactly. I think we had To be honest with you, I think we had like 2 weeks with him, and then we gave him up.
Well, you had more than that because that PG-13 deal didn't take place until this offseason. Like, you had, I think, they might have made that deal last trade deadline or something. But anyways, you had like a decent amount of time. But like,
still,
I think
where
it also.
Was this at?
Well, I think it also though is the Russ effect.
Yeah.
Like and like not disparage because Russ is a heck of a player.
Yeah, he is.
But at the same time, I think sometimes he's too ball dominant and like thinking sometimes that he's a better shooter than he is. Better 3-point shooter than he is. Because obviously Oladipo is thriving in this Pacers offense and being like the guy and being able to score almost at will. And whenever he wants to be able to score, that is the thing with the Cavs Pacers. I didn't understand why they kept setting a ball screen for him. Like, Victor Oladipo is taking people off the dribble. Let him take people off the dribble.
Yeah.
But
by the way, I do want to mention Lance Stevenson and LeBron going at it.
That's again, like a classic battle back and forth,
Right
exactly. Yeah.
Blow right into his ear.
But the Cavs end up pulling it out, and I think that still makes LeBron undefeated in the first round, which, holy crap.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm like, good for you. I really don't care.
Yeah, but I think
LeBron,
it is something, because he's been to what, like 7 straight NBA finals?
Yeah.
And even in the years that he didn't, like, he's never lost in the first round. Like, that in and of itself is impressive.
I do agree.
People, like, oh, I'm so surprised the Cavs went to a 7-game. It was a 4-5 matchup. Those teams are supposed to be even with each other. At the same time, I think you could overall make the argument, especially if you take LeBron James out of it, Indiana's got the better team.
Oh, yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Like the Cavs win because they have one LeBron James. You take him off that roster, and it's like a bunch of dudes.
A bunch of dudes that are getting carried.
an older George Hill that used to be with Pacers. You got a young Larry Nance Jr. who is a little limited offensively. You've got Rodney Hood, Jordan Clarkson, Tristan Thompson, which, by the way, where's he been all season? Because now all of a sudden he's like starting to play somewhat close to what he used to play.
Even with all this media crap going down about, wasn't he like cheating on his wife or something like that?
Yeah, something. I don't
Either
know.
way,
He's with
I'm
one
just
of the
like,
Kardashians
really?
Or something, I think, and who cares?
Right. I'm at the point of just wanting him to just go away. Go to another country or something.
Well, and I think they were actually going to almost make a deal for Tristan Thompson, and he wouldn't have been a story, if he wasn't with the Cavs, obviously. But, like, they gave him that big, lucrative deal, and then they got almost nothing on their return on their investment there. But all of a sudden he started to play well, and you saw the Cavs played better when he was, obviously playing better. Not saying that he's, he's the grease that makes the wheel move. But at the same time, like, to have a guy that just hustles and gets rebounds for you, like, that makes a difference. Kevin Love being consistent makes a difference. You saw that with the Toronto game the other night. I don't know if you happen to have a chance to check that one out other night. The Toronto Cavs game.
No, I did not.
So you even saw, like, when Kevin Love wasn't almost trying to make his own shot, he was better. Like, when LeBron was kicking, he might pump fake and take a dribble over or two. Like, he was nailing those threes. And, this Toronto series, I think, is something that could be really intriguing. Because, honestly, I think you have LeBron James that's determined. Once again, Toronto's got the better team.
Yeah.
The Cavs still have the best player in the world. But he's also, like, I think his gas tank's running low. Because, he played all 82 games. And, like, at some point it's going to wear on you. I don't care if you appear to be playing like Superman. Like, it's going to wear on you at some point, right?
Right.
You've played 82 games. Now in the first round you played 7-game series. So now you're at 89 games. First off, he's never played 82 games in a season.
Yeah.
He's in his 15th season at that. And now you're at 89, and your next game... Actually, no, he'd be at 90 games now with game 1. So, 90 games in a year, like, in a few months, that's a lot on your body.
Right.
Even for him.
Yeah. Look, bro, he's a freaking Band-Aid for the Cavs, okay? And after a while, Band-Aids need a new one.
Yeah, you got to change him out.
Right.
Which, I still think he leaves the Cavs.
I think he will this season, but I think we'll get into that once the offseason comes around. But
oh, we will. But a tease a long way out.
Yes, over yonder. But I think he's just a Band-Aid for the Cavs right now. I feel bad for LeBron. I really do. I'm not a huge LeBron guy, but I like LeBron. I just I'm at the point to where I just want him to get off the Cavs, and I want the Cavs to just be gone.
Well, what would the Cavs would not be a playoff team?
No, without LeBron.
Like, you're probably looking at a top 5 lottery pick if you don't have LeBron on there. Even with Kevin Love, I like Kevin Love. He's okay. But
he's
he's not going to lead that team to maybe if they were lucky they'd get in the 8th seed. But real quick, I do want to hop back over, and we talked about it a second ago. The OKC Thunder versus the Utah Jazz.
Hit me, brother.
OKC has to get rid of Melo, right? Some way they have to find a way to get rid of him.
Oh yeah.
When they acquired him, you and I talked,
dude.
And obviously it was before we sat down and did this, but you were ecstatic at first, and then you and I talked more, and it was like, yeah, this may not work.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, it's one thing to have a guy in PG-13 and Russ that want the ball in their hand, but you had another third dude that has apparently an ego the size of the planet Earth.
Yeah, no kidding.
And won't come off the bench even though he's been playing terribly. They have to obviously get rid of him, and I think it's you try to get rid of him, you try to keep PG-13, and you try to find more role players to fill in around those two,
I think what they're going to do this offseason, which, I totally agree with you. I remember you sending it to me. I forgot where I was. I think I was at some kind of football game. Anyways, I'm sitting there. You send me the tweet and all that, and I'm like, oh, no way. Carmelo, PG, and Russ. Yo, that's going to be so awesome. And then, a week later, you and me started talking, and I just kind of dialed down, and then I started seeing them play. I was like, yeah, they're doing great. And then the season started, and then I was like, what is this? This is not the OKC I was expecting. I've seen so many memes, by the way, about about perfection and all that. When you when you think you got superheroes on your team, but really they're just trash.
Yeah, I mean...
I think,
well, and I think people had higher expectations of what that would have been this year, but it obviously didn't culminate in what they thought it would. The Jazz just destroyed them, and more specifically, Donovan Mitchell destroyed them. Speaking
of the Jazz, they're up at halftime right now by 10.
By 10?
Yeah. Hold on, real quick. Let me make sure. By 9. Sorry.
Do your math better.
I'm sorry.
Gosh.
I'm sorry.
But, yeah, I mean, it obviously didn't come to what they wanted to.
I'm disappointed, to be honest.
I don't know how you can't be, but at the same time, you could see where it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, is the issue maybe here Russ? Being as ball dominant as he is, you've kind of seen, other players go away. And, the whole KD, liking on Instagram or whatever, a comment about Russ being the issue. I know your hatred toward KD and all that, but at some point you almost have to look at it and go, maybe it is him. Personality may rub you the wrong way. I don't know what it might be, but That I don't know.
Now let me throw in my opinion real quick. We're gonna be here for a good 2 hours, but anyways, look, I think Russ could be the problem. And I was thinking about that literally probably about 10 minutes ago. I was thinking, it could be our Carmelo. I don't think it's PG at all. I really don't. I don't
either. I think it's Carmelo or Russ. I think the only problem. Sorry for interrupting there.
No, you're fine.
I think the only thing you have to look at is who's been there for all of this. Russ.
Yeah.
So that's my only thought with it. But
look, I can't remember how long the OKC series went. Do you even remember? It was like 6 games.
It was 6 games, yeah.
Okay.
Jazz won at 4-2.
Okay, listen to this real quick. I saw, I can't remember who posted it. It was something on Instagram. Anyways, it was Russ, okay, with PG and Carmelo standing right by him. Guess how many points Russ had? Just
35.
43, okay? Now guess how many PG had?
28.
5.
PG had 5?
5 points, dude. Okay, guess how many Carmelo had?
3.
4.
No, that was close.
I'll give it to you. And as an OKC fan, I'm really disappointed. I think that is ultimately just so stupid, bro.
Well, and I mean I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, what'd you say Russ had 43?
Yeah.
If he gives the ball up, maybe a little bit more.
Well, and
do you get PG more involved and get his rhythm going? But at the same time, if he's struggling, yeah, you're as Russ, you're going, no, I'm going to try to help my team win. I don't know. It's one of those, which way do you go with it?
Okay.
But
look, part of me says, screw everybody, trade PG and Carmelo, and just get a bunch of good bench players and let Russ just take it all. Because you got to think, before those two came, Russ was killing it, bro. 50 points a game, triple-double every game. He was killing it. He was like the point guard LeBron James. So, I think that is an option, just to kick PG and Carmelo. Me personally, I think we should kick Carmelo.
Oh, Carmelo's got to go, I think. But, where does he go? Because he's almost like a cancer anymore,
Okay.
Okay, so say LeBron stays in Cleveland. Does he then go to Cleveland?
No, don't play that bull.
I know, but
no.
that was all talked about, Cleveland trading for him but at the same time, he probably would be a cancer there in Cleveland, and LeBron would ship him, somewhere else again. So
look, I think if he
the problem with Carmelo is he needs to accept where he is in his career. He still is a prolific scorer, but he almost needs to be that energy guy off the bench.
Look. As much as the 76ers are aggravating me right now, I would say a great fit for Carmelo would be the 76ers.
Yeah, but why get Carmelo if you get LeBron?
I know. It's just, at this point, I'm, again, going with the choice of get out of my face. I don't care where you go. You're getting on my nerves. Now, I don't know. I really don't know what I want.
All right, so real quick, and because these series have already started on some of them, we didn't even touch on the 76ers, but we need to move on to the NFL draft. Otherwise, we could talk about the playoffs all night long.
No kidding.
But the Sixers Celtics, how many games do you think that series goes?
7.
I do tend to agree with you. I think it does go 7. And, the thing is, Boston, you can see that their offense is almost a plug-and-play type offense. Kyrie goes down. Now, all of a sudden, Terry Rozier comes out of nowhere. But it's one of those other things. Victor Oladipo is probably going to be the most improved player of the year. But, Terry Rozier plug-and-play in Boston, he's just getting the shots that somebody else had before him, So then if he goes somewhere else, does he go down? The same can be said, and I know this sounds absurd, but would Tom Brady be as good outside of New England as he's been all these years with the Patriots, because maybe of the different offense,
right.
Well, because you see quarterbacks that, go different places, and if it's a different type of offense, they just struggle mightily. And, that's one of those things like Terry Rozier may go somewhere else, or maybe what wouldn't surprise me, and I'll be honest, is if they use a guy like a Terry Rozier as trade bait come like draft night to go get a guy like a PG-13 or Kawhi Leonard, to use him as, hey, and then they don't get what they thought they were getting because he's a product of this Brad Stevens offense.
Right. I think what you said is very true, and I think they will use Terry as kind of bait. I just hope he doesn't get screwed over by the Celtics. I know he came from Louisville, all that crap, but I just don't want him. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great player, but I just don't want him seeing him get screwed.
All right, last thing real quick before we go on to the NFL draft. Speaking of guys coming from Louisville, Donovan Mitchell, right? How good he's been all season. How dumb does Rick Pitino look now trying to say that Donovan Mitchell needed to come back for another year?
Dude, he's falling off the edge of the earth, man. I don't know.
When Donovan Mitchell was going to stay in, he was like, oh, he should have come back. Like, he was almost trashing him. But it's like, hello. Yeah, we can have that whole Rookie of the Year debate again. Ben Simmons, although, I don't feel that he's a rookie. By technicality, he is. Same reason that Blake Griffin won it over John Wall, because he set out that whole. But, that's not, if you talk specifically just actual rookies, Donovan Mitchell would win that hands down.
Yeah.
The only other one could be Jason Tatum, which then you look and go, those guys were picked after Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
Just, it goes to show you don't always get every single pick right. And sometimes it's more of the fit than it is, who they go to or the player themselves.
Well, I felt that they gave Donovan Mitchell a chance, and, he showed up. This is the same with Terry Rozier. Gave him a chance. He showed up, and he's showing off right now.
And exactly what those guys should do.
Right.
But now I said that was the last thing. So let's move on now to the NFL draft. Happened this past weekend. We're not going to go pick by pick, obviously. But a few thoughts here, right? The Browns with the number one overall pick, go Baker Mayfield. There was some surprise, right? Obviously coming in late because it thought it might be Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or Josh Allen, but they go Baker Mayfield. Any surprise?
No.
And how do you feel about it? Because I do have
some
thoughts on it.
Well, me personally, I think that I'm scared this is going to turn into another Johnny Manziel thing.
I think they're two completely different issues, though. Baker Mayfield had that issue at Arkansas. He's a college kid that got drunk one night and tried to run away from police because he was drunk. But at the same time, if you look at Baker Mayfield and his story, walking on at Texas Tech, right, winning the job at Texas Tech, then getting injured and replaced, then he walks on at Oklahoma, once again wins the job, and, oh, by the way, he's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner this year. And, he, helped to elevate Oklahoma. I think if you look at all these other quarterbacks, they necessarily didn't really elevate their programs. And I think for the Browns, if you're looking for a guy, somebody who elevates. You go to, if I look at Josh Allen, right, and I think about Josh Allen being...
Where's he from?
Josh Allen's from Wyoming.
See, that...
And he went number 7 to the Bills. And them trading there with Tampa Bay. But my thing with, Josh Allen yeah, his name got mentioned a whole lot recently, but like I don't feel like he took Wyoming to another level, right? His completion percentage wasn't that great this year. I do think the stuff with his whole Twitter when he was younger thing is a little overblown, and we've seen that recently. But that's the world we live in now, unfortunately.
Well, I'm at a point of where I'm like, Josh Allen. Who?
Yeah, I agree. But
no, I'm not saying that just because of Lamar. I'm just saying like
no. I know what you're saying, but like it's like
I don't know who Josh Allen is.
It's because he's big. He's got a cannon for an arm. But the problem is like
he didn't.
Like if you talk, if you just talk about like completion percentage, like his and Lamar's are like pretty similar, for their seasons. The thing with like Baker Mayfield, he gets a little less hype because he's shorter. He's a couple inches taller.
Yeah, but
he's hands down the number 1 overall pick. Yeah. Now, my personal thought with the Browns, I thought they should have maybe gone with Saquon Barkley at number 1 and then try to pick up Baker Mayfield at 4. But, reports came out that Baker Mayfield's agent said, I think it was the Patriots, if he was still available past like the number 1 overall pick, we're talking about trying to trade down to get him, which I think is maybe a little crazy.
Very.
But at the same time, like, you give Baker Mayfield maybe a year or two in that Patriots system, right? Him learn the quote-unquote Patriot way, and he takes over Tom Brady. Like, and you're not expecting him to start. In the Browns, you're almost going to expect him to start from day 1, even though Tyrod Taylor is there. So, they go with the first pick, Baker Mayfield. Saquon Barkley goes to the Giants, which I think then obviously symbolizes that Eli Manning's going to be there for another 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I think this may help Eli Manning. It's another weapon.
Is he? He's a
Saquon's
a
running back.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
That running back out of Penn State.
I couldn't remember.
And then Sam Darnold's the next QB off at the 3rd pick to the Jets. Could be a good fit. Could not be.
Well, I mean, they got like 5 quarterbacks.
Well, but the thing with Sam Darnold is the consistency of play. He comes back to USC this past year. Actually, I think he had to come back. But, like, it wasn't as good as the previous season. Like, he statistically, and it wasn't really that close. The Broncos getting Bradley Chubb at the 5, another defensive end. You put him opposite of Von Miller, like, that defense could be deadly there.
Oh, yeah.
I do like, personally, as for me, I do like what the Colts did with Quentin Nelson, guard from Notre Dame, putting a lot of emphasis on protecting their investment in Andrew Luck. And I don't know if you happen to see this or not, but apparently there were like people trying to offer just buku of trade deals to acquire Andrew Luck from the Colts.
Really?
Like, I think it was Irsay that said that. And it was just like I'm glad they didn't, because that would have been like outrage.
Look, my personal opinion on Andrew Luck is, I can't even watch the guy play anymore. He gets sacked and he partially dies.
Well, and I think that's it. Like, the offensive line was so bad. Like, you see them last year with Ryan Kelly, right? Get their center. Now you've got one of your guards here in Quentin Nelson, and you'll be able to hear a little bit of Kent Sterling talk about Quentin Nelson in the second half here. But, you have them obviously fortifying that offensive line. Later in the draft, they go and get him some help at the playmaking positions. But I do like what they did. You're obviously seeing them invest in protecting him. Josh Allen, as we said, went to the Bills at 7. The next QB is number 10 to the Arizona Cardinals, Josh Rosen, which a lot of analysts said he was the most pro-ready quarterback. But the problem is he has durability issues, right? He being injured. But I think the funny thing is he's going to Arizona Cardinals, and presumably going to be second string to a guy who also has injury-prone problems in Sam Bradford. Like, come on, Cardinals. What are you doing there? Like, come on.
You could probably take one of the 5 quarterbacks from the Jets.
Well, maybe, but
like I'm done. I'm done with the Jets. I'm done. They can't do nothing.
But when the Cardinals traded up, you might have thought it could have been somebody else. That would have been there, but kind of surprising. I do like the Packers getting Jair Alexander from Louisville.
Yeah,
cornerback. Help fortify that defense of the Packers. I was surprised that the Patriots didn't take a QB, like with Lamar Jackson still on the board.
I can't tell you,
and because all the talk was and I say that because all the talk leading up to the draft was that the Patriots were really in love with Lamar, and I thought, man, that'd be perfect. Him set behind Tom Brady for a year, maybe 2. He can kind of become a better pocket passer. We know how athletic and mobile he is, like phenomenal athlete. Like, I think it would have been a great fit. The Falcons, though, I do like what they did too. Calvin Ridley from Alabama, put him with Julio Jones. Like, Matt Ryan's got another weapon here.
Mind blown.
But then I think the next biggest thing, Sony Michel to the Patriots at 31. They get a running back in there, okay. If it's with the Patriots, I've learned to not really care if they get a running back or not, because apparently whatever running back they plug and play is the best one ever.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the Ravens into the first round. I know you have strong feelings about this, being a U of L fan. But Lamar Jackson goes to the Ravens at 32. Last pick of the first round. Baltimore trades back up with Philadelphia for this pick. Quick thoughts on this Lamar Jackson to Baltimore Ravens.
I'm glad that he went somewhere where he's behind a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. That's pretty much all I wanted for Lamar, was to go behind someone that had the experience, that was a potential Hall of Fame, quarterback, and I wanted him to get that experience and learn off of them. And, Joe Flacco's not a Tom Brady, but he's Joe Flacco. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows what he's doing. I'm hoping that he can teach Lamar how to throw. He can throw, but throw better. I was kind of mad at how late he was. He was literally the last pick, and I get it, agents and stuff like that.
No, I wasn't going to say that yet. But my thing is, I was going to actually agree with you. I thought he was taken a little later.
Yeah.
But I also do think that does have and stem from him not having an agent. Lamar was basically representing himself with his mother as his manager. I was listening to another podcast doing a draft recap. It was the Aaron Torres sports podcast. He and Nick Coffey were talking about it. And Nick Coffey is a radio host in Louisville, so obviously pretty well connected. And, he was telling that Lamar had his Pop Warner football coaches as his trainers. So, then also on draft day, he wasn't doing the things that NFL teams come in expecting to see. And I think some of that does stem from not having the agent, not having that training, maybe that higher caliber of training that an agent would have put you in touch with to make sure you went higher. Because obviously the agent wants you to succeed more, because when you succeed, he benefits better. You come to draft night, the agent would be able to rally, some teams to maybe pick you sooner than they did. who knows? Obviously you can't go back and change it, but I do think that kind of hurt him. Because another thing I did hear Nick Coffey say was, teams had trouble getting a hold of Lamar Jackson because they would have his personal cell phone number, which doesn't make teams happy, to have to contact him directly. It seems to work better through an agent. And, I understand what Lamar Jackson's doing. I get it, but at the same time, I think at some point he will have to get an agent. But, I don't answer phone numbers I don't know. And apparently Lamar did the same thing. And so then if you don't return those calls right, it can kind of rub people the wrong way, or it might be a day or two before you return them. So I think... I do think his fall through the first round does have some impact on not having that agent.
That's reasonable.
However, there are some people who didn't view him simply as a quarterback, I think he's a great quarterback. Maybe one of the best you'll ever see in college football because he changed the game so much. But to go to the Ravens, to be able to sit behind Joe Flacco for maybe 2-3 years, whatever. The Aaron Rodgers type deal, I think that can only benefit him. To help him learn how to be more of a pocket passer, but he still, can scramble. And to be able to do that with the Ravens, I like what they did there. You have the heir apparent, kind of Joe Flacco, who seems to have been on a kind of a decline. The only other team I thought might have taken him before is the Steelers.
Oh.
Don't
get me started.
Well, but I'm saying, put him in behind Big Ben and put him with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown.
That'd be deadly.
Well, because if Lamar starts scrambling, Antonio Brown breaks free, because then you have to pay attention to Lamar because he's so quick.
Yeah.
If you do an RPO, right, a run pass option with Le'Veon Bell and Lamar Jackson, who's going to get the ball there? Both of them can run you over and just run past you. So
nobody's definitely going to get that tackle.
The Steelers ended up addressing that later on. But it was an interesting first round. I do like the NFL draft.
It wasn't as exciting.
Well, it's one of those things for me, when it gets to Saturday, it kind of gets old, but those picks come in so fast. I like the first round just almost for the pageantry of it, but at the same time, I'm starting to get tired of hearing the talking heads all the time.
Yeah.
And, obviously every kid has a story, but I feel like I have to hear about everyone's story. And, some aren't as special as others.
Takes forever.
But, interesting. I did like what the Ravens did there at the end. They also get Hayden Hurst, which, by the way, that whole situation with Hayden Hurst, Tennessee out of South Carolina, I don't know if you know it or not. Hayden Hurst gets drafted by Major League Baseball, right? And he goes and plays 3 years or something like that, and I think he might have gotten hurt, but then also realized that baseball wasn't quite for him. So he gets paid, right, while he's in the minors. Then he goes to South Carolina, becomes an all-SEC tight end, and then is picked the 25th pick in the NFL draft. We talk about
what?
Hey, how crazy athletic is that guy to be able to go and realize that and I know I remember now what it was for Hayden Hurst. He had trouble hitting the strike zone. The movie Major League with Charlie Sheen as the pitcher as Wild Thing, It was kind of like that, where he just can't hit the strike zone to save his life. And I think he just got that mental block and realized baseball wasn't going to be for him, and he went to football, which he had played previously, and, was an all-SEC tight end. So,
look, I'm not hating on him, but you got way too much time on your hands, bro.
But at the same time,
money, so...
he's 26, 27, being picked. So, because of those 3 years playing baseball. But, that I think was a story there. The Panthers get some more help at wide receiver. We could run through them all, but no one really wants to hear that.
Y'all just want to hear my voice.
Why not? the Browns, honestly, like the way they were picking some of the thing, I thought, holy crap, is this an actual football team? You know, with one, you get Baker Mayfield, then you get Denzel Ward, a cornerback out of Ohio State. Like,
I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, and that's the Deshaun Watson trade there, you know, when they got Denzel Ward there. But, you know, then in the second round, you get Nick Chubb, running back from Georgia. So, I think overall the Browns had a pretty good draft. It may take another year or two to put it together, but I think they've got some foundation there. And I was like, I don't know what these Browns like. I don't know who these people are that are running the Browns now, but
they might actually win, my dude.
They might actually win more than one game. But with all that being said, Rylee, it was enjoyable to be back talking again with you.
Glad to be back, brother.
Sitting down and being able to record, and just as a reminder, right, to be able to help us out and just to be able to interact with us, go to iTunes, hit the 5-star rating, leave us a review. All that helps us out, and we'd greatly appreciate your support here of the podcast. And then make sure you subscribe so you get these episodes downloaded constantly. And then lastly, interact with us. Facebook, you can do. You can search for @RD Sports Report. You can go facebook.com/RD Sports Report. Same thing on Twitter @RD Sports Report. You can also interact with Rylee and I individually. Rylee, what's your Twitter there?
Capital R Rylee and _ RD Sports.
All right. So Rylee is @Rylee and it's RYLEE.
Mm-hmm.
By the way. So Rylee _ RD Sports Report. Mine is a little shortened because they won't let the hashtags or the ads go that long. So it is Dish _ RD Sports Report, DISH _ RD Sports Report. That's where you can follow us individually, and you can follow the podcast link @RD Sports Report. And with all that being said, Rylee, I've enjoyed this. For us, that'll do it for another episode of the R&D Sports Report. But up next is Kent Sterling from 1430 CBS Sports Radio in Indianapolis. Enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome in with me Kent Sterling from the Kent Sterling Show at CBS Sports 1430 in Indianapolis. Kent, how are you doing?
I couldn't be better. Having a good day.
We do appreciate you doing this. We're starting to do interviews here and appreciate it, and really to get your insight. We're really excited to be able to have that, especially coming out of Indianapolis and being able to talk a little more specifically with us about like the Colts draft situation. And
my pleasure. Absolutely.
That's where I think we want to start here. Overall, the NFL draft, is there a certain team that you feel like won the draft weekend?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is the way I look at the draft. In about 3 years, we're going to be able to figure it out for sure. So what I kind of do with my time is make sure I know what the Colts did, and what other teams did, I really don't pay that close of attention to. The guys who got the quarterbacks, you know, were the Browns right to go get Baker Mayfield? Was he the top guy? He's got some attitude to him, which I really like. But is he going to wind up being a better quarterback overall than a kid like Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or any of these other guys, the Allen kid? I have no idea. You know, the proof's going to be in the pudding. Were the Colts better off taking Quentin Nelson with number 6 than they would have been taking Roquan Smith? I think that, to me, that's the question. And so you in 3 years, we're going to take a look at where the Colts are and where the Bears are and make kind of a determination whether the Colts did the right thing by drafting another offensive lineman when it's that defense, in addition to some holes on offense, that really caused them problems last year. There are whole different ways to look at it. I usually spend the majority of my time trying to figure out what the Colts did, especially when you get out of the first 15 picks. When we don't really know these guys. We look at their 40 times and their benches and maybe a little bit of film in college, but we don't know how these guys are going to fit their franchises in the way that the guys who work for the franchise do. And even the best at this, you're going to hit a first round and get what you thought you were going to get that kind of dynamic, starting player who's going to be a part of your franchise or more and make Pro Bowls. You're going to hit about 54. And so, for the game, living 16 hours a day, it's a coin flip. For us, holy Moses, we're blind light switch.
I do agree with you that the few years down the road we'll be able to figure it out. What with the Colts pick there of Quentin Nelson at 6, do you think it was just more of trying to protect Andrew Luck some more rather than fill the holes on the defense?
I think that was part of it, but I think he was also the best player on the board at the time, and I think that he was the most complete player and the guy where the risk was least. When you've got as many holes as the Colts have got, you're almost guaranteed to draft to a need in some respect. And with a kid like Quentin Nelson, if you're going to get Anthony Costanzo to play as well as he can and Ryan Kelly to play as well as he can at center, you need a guy between those guys who's going to be pretty good. And Quentin Nelson checks all the boxes. He's really, really strong. He's really tough. He's mean. He's nasty. He finishes blocks, like he said in his draft press conference, to the echo of the whistle. He's a leader. And what you saw with Quentin Nelson and a bunch of other guys at the Colts drafted 11 guys. A lot of them were captains, and many were multi-year captains. So, it's kind of clear that what Chris Ballard and Frank Reich prize in Quentin Nelson and a lot of other guys on the list of players that they drafted, they want leadership, and they want guys who love football, and they want toughness. And they're bringing that to Indianapolis, and they're going to try to build a tough football team, take a team that last year was kind of soft, and hopefully ratchet up the toughness quotient, and by doing that, make themselves a better team.
Yeah, I do agree. It does seem like they are trying to get that toughness there in Indianapolis. The other thing, how big of a difference is there for you, someone who's in Indianapolis, is there between a Ryan Grigson and a Chris Ballard? Is it like night and day difference?
Oh, my. Yeah. Yeah. I think in almost every respect it's night and day. Ryan Grigson walked into the building unsure that he was capable of doing the job and never really communicated to anybody that he was sure that he was capable of doing it. And I think from day one, Chris Ballard walked into that building, knew what his job was, knew how to execute of doing it. Ryan Grigson was always about trying to prove who he. You know what I mean? Like, insecure guys are always going to credential themselves. Always going to tell you, they're always going to soft soak you a little bit. They're going to try to talk themselves into believing that they're in the right place for them at the same time that they're trying to tell you that and talk you into it. And it comes off as really kind of, even in the with Alex Marvez last week, Ryan Grigson sounded like a guy trying to make people believe that he didn't screw everything up in Indianapolis. And when Chris Ballard screws stuff up, he tells you. He says, yeah, we blew that. Here's what we were thinking, and it didn't come to pass, and we kind of... He's never lied to the media that I know of, and I've listened to him in person every time he's spoken to the media. And so Chris Ballard's just got a security about him, a confidence about him that is completely and totally diametrically 180 degrees opposed from Ryan. I don't know what kind of an evaluator of talent he's going to be, because we've only gone through the one draft, and it was kind of clear last year that what Ballard was trying to do was put together, not for the immediate, but for the future. Malik Hooker wasn't ready to contribute at a high level as a freshman, and then he got hurt about 6.5 games in. Quincy Wilson, not a guy who is kind of that same deal. You know, he was just a little bit too young. He's going to develop into a nice. This year, they went and did some other stuff and went and got guys like Quentin Nelson, who's going to walk into that building and be the starting left guard on this offensive line. And Ballard, he'll tell you that stuff. He'll say, here's what we did. He invited a bunch of media on Monday into the war room, into the draft room, and explained their process and explained exactly why they did what they did. Grigson would never do that. He would never have done it, not in a million years.
You know, you mentioned the into the war room. I was going to ask you if you actually had the chance, if you actually were able to go. I had seen where he invited everybody in, but I didn't know if did you go into it?
I didn't get a chance to do it because they did it at 5 p.m, and I'm on the air in 3 to 6. So
Right.
We were in the middle of the show, and it was Romeo Day. So I was down in New Albany doing the show at 5 o'clock and was going to stay. So, you know, maybe if it had been a normal Monday and I'd have been in Indy, you know, I could have recorded a segment or two and popped over there. But I really would have loved to have gone in. But I've talked to people who were in there and kind of got the vibe. And as with everything that Chris Ballard does, it was really kind of honest and transparent. And, you know, there were no cameras allowed. There was no recording of what he had to say aloud. And so he just kind of went through everything and explained and kind of peeled back the curtain and showed the process. And it was appreciated. And that's really all the media needs. You know, if you give us real information and tell us stuff, you know what, that, number one, it engenders a certain amount of trust. And number two, it puts us in a position where we've got the information necessary to be able to tell the truth to people. And that's all we ask. You know, but as far as Ballard's draft, we don't know last year. We don't know this year what it's going to be. We can look back at Ryan Grigson's draft and say, you know what in the world did you get out of these things other than Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton? You know, Kobe Fleener wasn't a bad pick. Dwayne Allen wasn't a bad pick. But you start scratching deeper than that, and in 13, 14, 15, those drafts were a complete debacle, and that's why this roster last year was in total ruin.
You spoke of Andrew Luck there. Do you think there's really a whole lot of merit to Jim Irsay talking about the amount of offers they got for a Luck trade?
So you got to kind of pick and choose. And listen to him. I don't think he tries to mislead people. I don't think it's like conscious deceit, but I do think that what he does is speak from a place of and give people kind of the shiniest version of the truth as it might exist in his brain. So when he talks, it's more, I listen for entertainment value more than information. I never know exactly. I'm not sure he knows that exactly 100% the truth. So Ballard, I listen to, and I think we're getting the straight poop from Jim Irsay. I listen to and I think, oh, well, all right then. And so I don't pay real close attention to the specifics.
Yeah, I agree there with you. It was one of those things. I saw the comments and I thought, well, like, if Andrew Luck is your franchise quarterback, why necessarily would you entertain that at all, no matter really what the package is?
Right, and other teams, without seeing Andrew Luck throw, I have no look. And you're thinking about trading Andrew Luck. You know, wait until everybody knows he's healthy and his to improve. But if he's healthy, nobody in their right needs a franchise quarterback. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I'm trying to think of instances where it might, and I guess the Broncos to the Bears, but the Broncos, And the Bears were stupid enough to think that Jay Cutler could be a franchise quarterback under the right conditions. Nobody deals on Andrew Luck if he's healthy, and if he's not healthy, what are you going to get? It just doesn't make any sense. The timing's wrong. The guys are wrong. And, you really want a guy who counts $25 million against the cap or close to that? You want that guy, if he can't throw a football and hasn't thrown a football in a year and a half in like a live situation, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, if that makes sense.
It does, and that was kind of my thought as well. Is it was like you haven't seen him throw in how long, right? And a team would be willing to take on his salary, and they don't know exactly what they're getting. You know he should be able to throw, and he's working toward that. But it's like, can he throw what he used to do? So, a lot of great stuff there with the NFL draft. But I do want to get your thoughts as well, Kent, on the NBA playoffs. And I do kind of want to jump back with you being there in Indy, to jump back to that Pacers-Cavs series and to get your thoughts on it. Was there a time in it that you thought the Pacers could win it, or did you, in the back of your mind, still always think the Cavs would end up winning it, maybe solely because they have a guy like LeBron? Because I think if you look at the two rosters, it's pretty obvious that the Pacers have the better players. The Cavs, I think, just win it with having LeBron there on their team.
I think that the Cavs won that series because, and LeBron alluded to this in the post-game interview after Game 7, they've got guys who've been there, done that, and the Pacers really don't. And as a result of that, the Pacers, they didn't know what they would be in that Game 7. And, winning a Game 2, what? Those are important, but nothing's really important until you win that fourth game of the series, and until you've proven to yourself that you're capable of winning that fourth. LeBron, there's probably a little bit of a seed of doubt in your mind, and your performance is going to reveal that doubt. And I don't even know if that happened, to tell you the truth, with the Pacers. I thought they played pretty well in Game 7 once they got it rolling. But they got off to a bad start, and it was kind of like they had to prove worthy. And by then, the kind of left the station. I think beating, prior to the NBA Finals, is really one of the NBA Finals the last 7 years for a reason. The best basketball player of this generation. And I think that the Pacers were the better team. I think they're going to be the better team next year. I thought that the Pacers were going to find a way to win that series because they were the better team, and I still think that they are.
And there were times I thought, well, the Pacers may actually do this, and, I thought it was more to the better team, but you did see, to me, more there in Game 7. You had the more experienced guys with the Cavs, as you said, that had been there and done that before, and that seemed to reign true for them and be able to help them over the hump. But the Cavs going into Toronto winning Game 1, do you think this is a just kind of just a blimp here in Game 1 for Toronto, or do you think it might be the telling sign of how this series might go?
Yeah, I think it might be a quick series, to tell you the truth. If Toronto wasn't ready to win Game 1, I don't know why they're going to be ready to win Game 2, you know what I mean? And back to the Pacers series and that Game 7 and how it kind of affects the Toronto series is I don't think that the Cavs win without the performances of Tristan Thompson and George Hill, who really hadn't done much in that series prior to Game 7. Both those guys are heavy rotation players now, and both those guys make the Cavaliers significantly better. Tristan Thompson is a tough matchup, was a tough matchup for the Pacers, will be a tough matchup for the Raptors. George Hill is a really good long defensive point guard and who can switch different positions. He can really kind of guard 1, 2, and in some cases 3. And as a result, I think that this Cavs team is just better built to play against the Raptors than they were to play against the Pacers. And I think that the Raptors have a lot of doubt in their mind as to whether they can compete with LeBron James and the Cavs. They've had a lot of difficulty with that in the past. And I think that this could be a sweep against home court advantage, which doesn't happen very often. It's kind of like, somebody going alone in euchre and the opposing team sweeps all 5 hands. That doesn't happen very often, but I think it might happen in this series.
I think you hit that nail right on the head there, Ken. Because I watched in and out on Game 1 with the Cavs and the Raptors, and they seemed better matched up to take on the Raptors than they did Indiana. Indiana, it seemed like the Cavs had issues with their athleticism. Victor Oladipo is able to just pull it up top and drive right past them, and it doesn't seem that Toronto is quite able to do that, or maybe the Cavs fix their defensive woes in that short little amount of time. But I think,
and you saw that. You're exactly right. I mean, DeMar DeRozan tried to get to the rack and couldn't get there in the way that Victor could. You're exactly right, and I think that you saw late, and then in the overtime, that the Raptors, there was just a lack of belief that they could get that done. When you have a lack of belief and you get really tight, you get stiff-handed. And at the end of regulation, with DeMar DeRozan and Valanciunas and those guys trying to bat the ball into the bucket, that's exactly what happened. Their hands got stiff, they couldn't convert, and they lost.
And I think for the Cavs especially, it's this reemergence, so to speak, of Tristan Thompson coming back and George Hill. For Tristan Thompson, it's I think an energy guy to get in there and get you the boards, what he used to do. And I think that's kind of where, for the Cavs, that Indiana series seemed to kind of turn when he started to turn it on more consistently, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, Kevin Love is kind of a pretty boy 4, kind of a pretty big who can step out and hit shots. But Tristan Thompson is going to do the work down there that's going to get you playoff wins. Kevin Love, you saw in Game 1, kind of a 7-point guy. He did get some rebounds. But without Tristan Thompson, they got problems underneath, and they've got a rebounding disadvantage, especially against Valanciunas and others with the Raptors. And I think that carries the day. As long as Tristan Thompson can continue to play and doesn't wear down, and George Hill doesn't have that back stiffen, I think the Cavs are in great shape.
Lastly here, kind of with some of the NBA playoffs, where do the Pacers go from here, do you think? They do, if I'm correct, they do have a lot of cap space coming up this offseason.
They do. Right now they've got about $5 million, but they can create. Corey Joseph opted to come back, so he exercised his player option to return. Still waiting on Thad Young. If Thad Young comes back, that eats $13.7 million against the leaves. It frees up 13. They've got 5 under the cap right now, so that'd be 20. They could, if they Jefferson, only 4 of his $10 million for next year's guaranteed. $1.5 million of his $10 million is guaranteed. Darren Collison, I think it's $3 million of 10 is guaranteed. So if they wanted to go crazy and create a bunch of cap space, they have the ability to do it. But I think that they're going to bring these guys back lock, stock, and barrel. And if they lose guys, it's going to be free agents like Glenn Robinson III. Joe Young might not come back. But other than that, I think the rotational players are going to be back because this management team, we talked to Kevin Pritchard this week, Nate McMillan, they love this team. They love that roster. And because of that, I think that these guys have earned another shot. They all came together. You had like 10 new guys on this roster. And so there was a lot of chaos last offseason. And these guys came together and worked really, really hard. and put together a season that was much better than anybody thought they were going to have. I predicted that they were going to win 35 games, and I was the most optimistic guy in Indianapolis about the Pacers, and nationally, the average was about 31 wins. They went out and won 48 games because they bought in completely to the team-first philosophy, and I think that counts for something with Kevin Pritchard and Nate McMillan. So I think these guys, they all come back, minus a few changes. They do have a decision to make about Lance Stevenson. They've got a team option for him at about $4.5 million, and they've got to make a decision whether they want Lance around or whether they don't want to take a chance with Lance going into a contract year. But I think they're going to bring him back too.
Well, and I think for Lance, it kind of has that veteran leadership, but at the same time that defender that can get out there and just kind of help the younger pieces in a Victor Oladipo who's been in for a few years, but doesn't have as much seasoning as a guy like a Lance Stevenson. And I think it may just be he seems to be almost like a glue guy to me for the Pacers.
He's an energy guy for sure, but Lance needs guidance. Lance is kind of like a bowler. Maybe he's the bowling ball that's being thrown about 175 miles an hour toward the pins, and you need guys kind of toward the gutter who are going to bat the ball and keep the ball out of the gutter and keep the ball moving toward the pins, keep redirecting him and redirecting his energy toward a good place rather than a kind of a crazy place. Lance can get a little bit wayward in his behaviors and his thoughts, and unless he's got an Al Jefferson and a Thad Young and a Dan Burke and these guys, Bill Bano, Corey Joseph, to kind of put their arms around him and say, hey, here's where we are right now. You got to get your head back to this. He can kind of spin off the rails. The fans here love him. I mean, when he decided to go to Charlotte instead of stay here, $44 million, he went to Charlotte and wound up getting paid for $2 million. Traded, I think he went to the Clippers, he went to the Grizzlies, he played for the T-Wolves for a bit. He kind of bounced around a lot, came back to Indiana, and at Indiana, it fit again for him. And if he respects that fit, I think he can play here for a long time. And if he doesn't, I think he's going to wind up wandering again and being disappointed with the results.
You know, I do think he seems to have only worked, so to speak, kind of in Indiana. He's worked the best there with the Pacers, and maybe it's just the organization and how it's run that he seems to have had his best fit there in Indiana.
And fans enjoy him too. Like in other places, I think fans were very wary of Lance Stevenson, but here, the fans love him. You know, there's just something about his exuberance that vibes really, really well in Indianapolis and didn't in other places. It just kind of works here for him. And he should have known that when he decided to leave and kind of take short money because of the way free agency was and the way the cap was going to explode. He took a shorter term for the same money rather than 5 years, $44 million. And he'll tell you today that was an enormous mistake.
Speaking of people who Indiana fans have come to adore, I do want to get to the commitment of Romeo Langford. You were there in New Albany. If I'm not mistaken, you also went to New Albany. Yeah,
yep.
as a student, you went to New Albany
Proud
as well.
Bulldog.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, Kent.
Absolutely.
I'm also a graduate of New Albany. And so to be able to see somebody like Romeo come out of New Albany makes me proud. Even if I'm not, an Indiana fan, a Hoosier fan, it still makes me proud to see the way he carries himself and the way he represents the school overall. But I just want to get a little bit of your thoughts from the ceremony there on Monday.
I thought it was terrific. I thought it was really good, and I'm kind of trying to walk guys nationally off their ledge. And they're kind of taking the take that I would probably have if this was a guy down in Raleigh, North Carolina, who had this kind of ceremony with all kinds of pomp and circumstance, rather than just saying, and here's where I'm going. I think the less drama, the better. But I'm trying to explain to these guys who've written about this and have criticized the sort of over-the-topness of that ceremony on Monday night. I'm trying to tell them that this is about the community as much as it was about Romeo and Romeo's family. Like, if Romeo had put that thing together, it would have been a hell of a lot different than the way it went Monday. And I think that what people need to understand is that the relationship between New Albany basketball and the community of New Albany is different, fundamentally different from that tether that exists in a lot of towns between the high school basketball program and the city. You know, in New Albany, it has always been really important. And when people talked about, well, if he says Vanderbilt or Kansas, there's going to be trouble. No, there's not going to be trouble, because first and foremost, the people in that gym are going to be New Albany fans and Romeo Langford fans. And while they're going to be really happy if he goes to Indiana, you know what? They're happy for the kid no matter what he does. And this is more a celebration of him and the heritage of New Albany basketball than it is a commitment ceremony where somebody's going to be disappointed or some people are going to be happy because he picks a certain school. This is just different. It's always different in New Albany, and it's been really fun over the last few weeks to be able to talk to people about it, because they just kind of don't get it. And up here in Indianapolis, I got this kind of splashback. Well, you know, high school basketball used to be great before they got rid of the one-class tournament. Now it's 4 classes, and people don't care anymore. Number one, that's in Indianapolis. There are as many people going to high school basketball games today, and maybe more, than there were in the mid-'90s. And in New Albany, I don't think that matters a whole lot. You know, the fans, while they could be salty about, you know, that sectional, the way it was historically, when I was there, it was New Albany, Providence, Jeffersonville, and Clarksville. And it was a cool deal, and it was a neighborhood war, and you went over to Jeff, and my senior year, it was at New Albany. But that was great. That was fun. Now people in New Albany have to drive, you know, almost an hour north on 65 to get to Seymour to go to those games. And they have to do it weekend after weekend after weekend, because it's also where the regional and the semi-state are, at least from time to time, the semi-state. And, you know, they do it without complaint, and it's just a cool deal. New Albany basketball is just different from basketball in any other community that I've been around or been in or visited in the state of Indiana. So I think it's been really, really cool to be an ambassador for New Albany basketball over the last few weeks, as people have really started to talk about it. And even, you know, back to Romeo's sophomore year when they won a state championship, you know, to be the guy up here who can kind of tell the story of how important that basketball program is to that city. That's been a lot of fun. For the kid, I'm really happy this is over, and I don't think that he could have done this or his family could have done it any better. You know, I think that they did thing to make this a complete and fair and honest process, and that they wound up in Indiana is just a bonus. But congratulations to Romeo, Donnie Unruh, Jim Shannon, Sean East, who's going to be an all-star. Jim is going to be the all-star coach. You know, so this train's going to keep rolling for another month and a half, and I think we're all going to enjoy the ride.
And I 100% agree everything you just said there, Kent. You know, what people don't understand is that New Albany basketball is different. You know, I go up to all the sectional games, the regional games. I was there, you know, when they won it in Romeo's sophomore season, and it was just something different. You don't even see some other state, you know, other teams within the state that travel or get behind their basketball team as well. And you know, I do think with whether he picked Vandy or Kansas over IU, it still would have been a celebration for Romeo. Yeah, the lean I think was more obviously for Indiana, but what does this mean in the short term for Indiana basketball, and what does this mean, do you think, even long-term for Indiana basketball and maybe even Archie Miller?
Short term, they just got a whole lot better because they got a kid who can flat score the basketball. And you know, I maybe this is over the top, but the comparison that I've been drawing is kind of like if you took half of Isaiah Thomas and half of Calbert Chaney and you threw it into a basketball player, that's Romeo Langford. Because number one, Isaiah Thomas, I think Romeo Langford is a killer. Calbert Chaney is maybe the smoothest offensive player I've seen in Indiana, and Romeo Langford is smooth like Calbert was. I think this is a guy who can create offense, and that was a team last year at Indiana where they couldn't create offense. They didn't have a guy who could get that done, and Romeo can. On the defensive end, yeah, I think people are going to be kind of surprised at what an adept rebounder he is. He's really good. He's got a good nose for the ball. He's the only guy I saw in the McDonald's All-American game who got in a defensive stance even once. He's a willing competitor. He wants to win. That's first with him. I think you got a guy who for at least a year is going to be really, really, really good and help your team succeed kind of in the way that Chaney did during his freshman year. In the long term, guy. You know, people are talking about Romeo being sort of a Pied Piper and making it cool for people like Keon Brooks or Trace Jackson Davis to pledge Indiana. But I think there's got to be a second guy. There's got to be a validation. It's not the first guy in the pool that kind of releases everybody to go jump in the pool. It's the second guy who jumps after the first guy that makes it okay for everybody at that point. And so I think there's got to be a second guy. But once there's a second guy in the state of Indiana who decides he wants to go to Indiana, one of the kind of a top 30 kid, then I think that brand substantially more valuable to high school players in the state, and Indiana is going to accomplish its goal, at least in the moderate term, of being the program in Indiana for high school kids and the one that they want to play for more than anybody else. And that's can't recruit Indiana, you can't win consistently at Indiana. If you can recruit Indiana, those years that Indiana's got great talent, and you get those guys, you can win national championships.
Kent, those were great comments. I think that also does speak even to Tom Crean's success, because he didn't seem to pick the right kids in Indiana to go there. Right. And I think that, you know, that is that you have to be picky somewhat. You can't just always take kids from your state if they're not going to maybe even benefit more the program or at the level for the program.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, that 2012 class, they got Yogi, that was terrific. But Hollowell, Perea, Jerkin, you know, Ron Patterson came and went before classes even started. You know, you had guys who are not forces for good. You can't just go get Indiana guys. You're exactly right. You got to who fit your culture while being from Indiana. And the reason that Indiana is really important, there are a few. The high school coaching is really, really good. The fundamentals of basketball are taught here by trainers and coaches, whether it's summer basketball or high school basketball, at a really high level. Kids get basketball here. The best athletes in Indiana, they invest their time and effort in getting better at basketball at the expense of other sports in the way that they don't elsewhere. And then if you can't get guys from, let's say, Indianapolis or New Albany or Columbus or, Lafayette to say, hey, I want to go to IU, how are you going to go to, like, Newport News, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Boston, New York, and tell kids to come to Indiana and make it sound better somehow for them than the guys in the state itself thought it was going to be? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you wind up maybe, we all know who Kenny Johnson is, and I'm not saying Kenny did anything wrong when he was in Indiana or Louisville, but something happened at Louisville. A lot of things happened at Louisville, and there Kenny was. And when guys start coming from the East Coast, from a couple of those AAU programs, I got nervous. And I think we were right to get nervous. And I'm not saying that anything untoward happened, but those were red flags to me. And those red flags are no longer flying, and they don't fly as long as you're getting Indiana kids to come to IU.
Kent, I've enjoyed our conversation here, and I thank you for your time. Anything else in regards to anything we talked about that you need to get off your chest or anything?
Not really. I just think that it's a really cool time in the state of Indiana. The leadership, I think, that's being provided to the professional teams, to the college teams, to some of the high school teams, really, really good. And as people kind of assail sports as sort of, a distraction and not a real benefit to our society, I'd say, you know what, you want to have a kid who grows up and kind of understands some stuff about life. I think that you can do worse than listen to people like Archie Miller, Jim Shannon, or Matt Painter, Lavelle Jordan, Frank Reich, Chris Ballard, Kevin Pritchard, and Nate McMillan. I think that we're entering a golden age in leadership, and the more your kids are plugged into sports, I think the better people they're going to be.
All right. I completely agree there with you. It seems like it's a different time, not only at the high school level with sports here in Indiana, but I think it starts at that professional level, and I think you've seen that with that investment, that the Pacers and the Fever have made into Indiana high school basketball for the state tournament, the investment that the Colts have made into high school football, and it just seems to all flow from high school to college to the pros, and it seems to all work best.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Fever, because Pokey Chapman is another person. That's a great role model for women in the state via sports to kind of learn all the lessons that sports provide. So I appreciate that.
It was actually one of those things that, I remember all the stuff, the sponsorships for the IHSA, and I didn't want to leave the Fever out. So,
yep.
But I do appreciate you doing this, Kent. And I thank you, and maybe one day down the road you will be the answer to who was the first interview on this podcast. So you could be a trivia question for us maybe one day. So I thank you for your time.
Well, I'm glad
Kent.
you kept it in the New Albany family.
Yeah. Well, and that once I realized that, I thought who better to start us off than a couple of New Albany graduates talking about a New Albany kid making his college commitment. So
absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
All right. Thank you, Kent.